Welcome back to the Metaphoric Music Review, the first genuinely big week in quite a while. Some big name stuff to get to. I'm Gabe.
I'm Dan.
I'm Darin.
Talking about the music that Pitchfork thinks everyone should be talking about. If you don't know, Pitchfork is an online music magazine. It's basically the loudest voice in music today. Each week, they review a bunch of albums. Most get pretty mediocre scores, but a couple get this coveted BNM or BNR label. Dan, what is that?
BNM, Best New Music. BNR, Best New Reissue.
Right, so those are the releases that Pitchfork thinks all lovers of music should be talking about, and that's exactly what we're about to do. We're also going to tell you about a few notable pans, some gems that Pitchfork is either underrated or ignored completely, Pitchfork's weekly Sunday classic, and now Pitchfork's BNTs, or Best New Tracks. It's important to remember, though, you don't need to know or care about Pitchfork at all to enjoy this podcast. We're going to tell you everything you need to know about the week in music. So, Darin, what are we talking about this week?
For the week of April 17th through April 23rd, we will be discussing Kendrick Lamar's Damn, which got a BNM, Gas's Narco Pop, which also got a BNM, Meredith Monk's Key, which was a BNR, and for our Sunday classic, we had Portishead's Dummy. We also got another BNR, Thelonious Monk's
Les Liaisons Dangereuses.
1960. But that's not getting a wide release until next month, and we've been unable to track it down. In any case, we just discussed Thelonious a few episodes ago, so please head over to metaphoricmusic.com to check it out.
Yes. Also, Dan, you had a little record store day experience. Normally we'd give you like your own field trip section, but we're just packed this week. So how did it go?
I think the first ever field trip was Record Store Day last year, but
yeah,
it went all right. It's too busy for me. You know how like alcoholics hate St. Patrick's Day because it's all the amateurs. That's Record Store Day.
That, but okay.
You did well.
Makes sense.
Well, Record Store Day is that for me basically. All the amateurs are out, which is okay, I guess. But I just bought one thing. There's like a Stooges demos from like before and right after Raw Power was recorded. That was the only thing I picked up. But not a lot of stuff for me out there.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to mention it so that you can continue your streak of field trips. You better think of something to do this week.
Yeah, I don't have anything planned for a couple weeks. So yeah, I'm gonna have to drive somewhere or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to spend a lot of time on a Record Store Day, but one thing I noticed was that like there were a bunch of things that came out for Record Store Day that I couldn't find, like the Thelonious Monk thing, the Meredith Monk reissue, like this Bruce Springsteen live thing that Pitchfork rated pretty highly that I kind of wanted to check out. And it's funny because before I was thinking like, man, Record Store Day is getting a little pointless because everything they come out with, they just issue widely anyway. Now it's like they're not, and I'm more annoyed than I was.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff gets wide released and some of it doesn't. Some of it gets like released first at Record Store Day, like they're reissuing Moondog's self-titled record, which I couldn't find. So, once it gets a wide release, I'll pick it up. But I think they're doing that with Thelonious Monk, probably Meredith Monk as well. It's hit or miss in what they wide release and what they don't,
Does Record Store Day only happen like once a year?
Well, Record Store Day is once a year, but then they also have like Record Store Day Black Friday, which is the day after Thanksgiving. So it basically happens twice a year.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, sounds good. Find a new field trip. But let's get into the best new tracks. This week we got two BNTs, like I said, best new tracks, which Pitchfork typically uses to highlight promising singles. What we like to do with these is listen to them right now, right at the top of the show, and share some quick reactions in real time just to decide whether the upcoming albums from which they're coming could be worthy of that coveted BNM. However, this week we're going to skip one of those BNTs, Playboy Carti's Magnolia, because the full album has already been released and received a 7.3 pan. That leaves us with just one, and Darin, take it away.
This week we have The War on Drugs, Thinking of a Place. Let's listen.
And I'm thinking of a place, and it feels so very real. Just moving through the dark.
Retro Heartland rockers, the war on drugs broke out in a big way with 2014's Lost in the Dream, which landed at number 3 on Pitchfork's end of the year list. This 11-minute single has been released for Record Store Day, and it's not clear if the band's highly anticipated follow-up is on its way or not. So what were your thoughts on Thinking of a Place?
Oh, God.
I was picturing Dan's face the entire time I was listening.
I was afraid I would fall asleep.
He's speechless.
Yeah. To quote Mark Kozlik, it sounded like basic John Fogerty rock.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that whole scandal. Yeah. That was... I don't know. I kind of dug Lost in the Dream. Did you ever listen to that, Darin?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did, actually. And I liked it a lot. It was kind of one of those things that I listened to like that year and then didn't really come back to, though. Yeah. I don't see how this is not just totally rehashing that. Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that's totally fair. I mean, one of the things I always admired was like the production on that album. And I think the songwriting is solid, and this literally doesn't sound any different than that.
Yeah, except for that, I feel like the songwriting and the production were just like a little bit less than sort of the highlights of that album. You know, sometimes there would be these really long songs on that record, but they would kind of build in intensity. This just kind of like this grooved like a demo beat on a keyboard grooves, you know, for just 11 straight minutes, like 4/4 Heartland rock demo beat.
This is what this was a 3-minute song that they made be 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's so interesting how like we just recently listened to like a super long single as well, and when this song sounded like it was about to end, it was around like the 4.5 minute
Yes.
mark.
Yes.
Yeah, and the other one did that too. Fleet Foxes like sort of just ended after like a solid 3 minutes, and then we got a whole bunch of fucking noodling. But this one I guess wasn't really noodling; it was just like the song again.
Right. There's like a little interlude there, and then right back into the song. More verses to listen to.
Did you like some of the guitar solos, Dan? At least
I hope I never in my life have to hear that song again, ever, as long as I live.
Wow.
I mean, can anybody think of something nice to say about it? Is anybody... I mean, Darin, are you at least curious to check out the coming record, if there is one coming soon?
I mean, I definitely think I will. I didn't necessarily, like, hate this song. You know, I just think that if the next record is any good, or if it's just like this, it'll probably be something that I'll listen to, you know, during that year and then kind of forget about it.
Guess you're not excited, Dan.
No, I think I'll quit the podcast if I have to listen to this.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting how like music works this way. Like you get these like massive, just these success stories, these breakout stories, and then it's like they just won't do anything else, and they just fade into obscurity. It's like just destiny for 99% of these like big breakout bands. But yeah, I'm not too excited after listening to that. Maybe it'll be more fun to dive into the reviews.
Yes. Can't be worse.
I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. Cocaine quarter piece, got war and peace inside my DNA. I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA. I got hustle, though ambition, flow inside my DNA. I was born like this and sworn like this, immaculate conception. Not transform like this, perform like this. Wish out you a new weapon. I don't contemplate.
All right, you just heard a snippet from our first proper review this week, Kendrick Lamar's Damn. Just to remind you, when Pitchfork reviews things, they review them on a 0 to 10 scale, somewhere around 8.2 or 8.3. They give it a BNM if it's a new release, or a BNR if it's a reissue of an old album, anthology, greatest hits, something like that. So, Dan, take it away.
Yeah, first up, we've got Kendrick Lamar with Damn. Tuesday, they got a 9.2 and a BNM, and a review by Matthew Trammell. It might seem like Kendrick, who's earned universal acclaim for literally every project he's released, has been on the top of the world for a long time now, but he didn't really ascend to voice of a generation level until 2015's trailblazing To Pimp a Butterfly, which fused jazz, funk, and spoken word with introspective lyricism that tackled a whole host of cultural and political issues. His 2016 demo collection, Untitled Unmastered, was also very well received, but for his massively anticipated proper follow-up, Kendrick seems to have set his sights directly on the charts for the first time. So far, it's paying off. The Mike Will produced Humble has become Kendrick's first #1 single. The album itself beat out Drake for most first week sales of the year, and radio-friendly cuts like DNA, Loyalty, and Love are climbing toward #1 at a rapid pace. The album is definitely less conceptual and socially conscious than To Pimp a Butterfly, but it's still earning a lot of praise for its thoughtful and sometimes angry takes on 2017's political climate, Fox News, Donald Trump, and the realities of African American life. At the same time, fans are somewhat divided over Kendrick's return to a more traditional hip-hop sound, but this hasn't stopped Pitchfork from giving Damn the highest score of the year so far. So for the millionth time, because we've reviewed that Untitled Unmastered, and we sort of did To Pimp a Butterfly. Let's recap our feelings about Kendrick and the last few projects of his.
Yeah, so I was really, really on board with Good Kid, Mad City. Was I don't know, dismayed a little bit, not necessarily by To Pimp a Butterfly, but like the reactions to it. I mean, I just think that like conscious hip hop is trash as a rule. And he was like he always had that sort of like smartness to him, but he was really getting into the world of conscious rap, which sucks and is pretentious and boring. And people were treating him like, it was like just, he was the prized possession of all like hip hop purists. You know what I mean? It was just, I just got so sick of it. Untitled Unmastered had like a banger or two, which was sort of like, hey, is he gonna like go back to being good? But then like most of it was kind of like conscious jazzy trash like this. I mean, it just felt like, oh, I want to get real smart and politically conscious, so how could I sound real smart? Oh yeah, jazz is real smart, or something like that. He's still really good, and it was still like a really, really great album just because he's so great, but it left a real bad taste in my mouth. So I would not say I was like super looking forward to this. What about you guys?
I mean, pretty much the same sort of trajectory, I guess. Like, I loved Good Kid, Mad City. I was really, really into that. I didn't really listen to Pimp a Butterfly too much. I mean, I thought it was cool and everything, but I could kind of tell right away that it was a little dense with the politics and stuff. And that just kind of turned me off. You know what I mean? It was a very long album. I don't know. You just felt like there was a lot there that I didn't want to take the time to really dig into, and then we returned to that kind of due to this podcast. And I mean, I still like it, but it wasn't, it's just not fun. You know what I mean? Like, that was what I loved about Good Kid, Mad City. It was just fun, you know, and I think that this album kind of turned it around. But how do you feel, Dan?
Yeah, I basically agree with both of you guys. I liked Good Kid, Mad City. The three of us actually saw Kendrick when that album came out.
That's true.
For the Yeezus tour. I loved that record. I was excited for Pimp a Butterfly because of that record. And then, I didn't love it. I don't like that whole jazz thing in hip-hop. I don't like conscious rap. So that made me not that excited for this album. I thought that Untitled Unmastered was like not done very well. It was just kind of like for the fans only. I didn't really care. So I wasn't excited for this at all. But we'll save my feelings going forward. So describe the sound of Damn for us.
Yeah, so it's definitely different from To Pimp a Butterfly. At the same time, it's not like as different as the single Humble would lead you to expect. I mean, it's almost like going in two different directions at the same time, because we get a lot of these kind of like mid-level grooves where he's sort of like just being all introspective, and we got a lot of that on To Pimp a Butterfly as well, but then it's sort of interspersed with these like absolute 100% bangers. And like the fact that he would work with Mike Will Made It, who that beat was actually made for Gucci Mane, but for whatever reason it ended up in Kendrick's hands. And we just get these like kind of radio, I don't know, it's almost like when I listen to Pimp a Butterfly, when I go back and listen to it now, it's like I really don't hate it. I think he's really great, but I just find myself like I kind of just want to listen to Blacker the Berry and like King Kunta, and you know what I mean? Like those are the ones you can sort of actually jump into. The rest of it, it's like, oh, I got to sit down and listen to this whole like hour and a half, lesson and narrative and this just had a lot more of that, but it wasn't totally that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was like less heavy-handed. I think that was one of the problems with Pimp a Butterfly. It's just heavy-handed. I wasn't wanting a lesson with a Kendrick record, and I mean, good for him for having some beliefs or whatever, but it's just not what I wanted. And I agree with you. There's good songs on it. It's not a bad album. Like I don't hate it. I just never feel like listening to it. It's a commitment. You have to listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
So I agree with you there.
Yeah, I generally agree with both of you guys here. I think it's I think it strikes a pretty interesting balance between like To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City. Like Gabe had said, there's definitely those banger songs on there, but there are definitely some tracks that really did make me think of like To Pimp a Butterfly. Just in the way that they're sort of drawn out, and they're very, narrative driven, you know what I mean? But I think Kendrick is just such an interesting person to listen to that, he kind of gets by with that. And then, he kind of follows that up with a song like Humble or something that sort of brings you back, or, even within the song itself, maybe like that Triple X song, for instance, there are like, there's a section of it that turns it back up and sounds like a different song almost. But yeah, I think it's interesting how he tries to balance the two.
See, okay, so I think that's an interesting question because I spent all of this week wondering, like, is it balanced or is it like kind of fractured? Because a lot of times this album made me think of like Life of Pablo in a way where it's like a mess, but it's still working, sort of. It's like there's this concept, like there's supposed to be this grand concept. And what's weird is like on Untitled Unmastered, the same thing happened where obviously these tracks like, were just sort of random demos and stuff. And he like worked really hard to make it seem like a record. He like put an intro and put new transitions in between things and sort of, put some attention to the whole product rather than just like, oh, I just slapped, I just hit shuffle and here are 8 demos that I didn't use,
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a similar thing's going on here where the tracks are not like as conceptually designed as To Pimp a Butterfly, but he's kind of trying to present it like they are. There's this whole like sort of theme of...
But isn't that kind of how Good Kid, Mad City is?
Maybe, but I still felt like that one was even more... It was still more conceptual because it sort of like had this like growth narrative going on. And it's like we get that same kind of growth narrative going on here of like his destiny or his upbringing and stuff. But then we just like take these little pit stops to like, the song Loyalty with Rihanna. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a pop single, it just is like, but he's like playing it like this stuff is all connected. And then, Humble has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
It just is all of a sudden like, here's a banger.
Yeah.
Is it disjointed or is it a nice balancing act?
I mean, I agree with you. It's not like this grand conceptual product like To Pimp a Butterfly, but I don't think that's a negative. And I think
but he's trying to pretend like it is.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's okay. I think it's all right to take an album that's maybe, some songs that maybe aren't incredibly cohesive and then finesse it a little bit to make it sound like it is. I think that's good. Not everything has to be some big grand concept record, and honestly I'm glad it wasn't that again. So in your face.
I mean, I think what I was trying to get at is like sound wise it sounds like he's reaching into both places and attempting to like mature them, and I feel like there's definitely a level of maturity shown here. But going to your point, Gabe, about like the sequencing almost, I actually agree. And I as much as I love Humble, I think it may be like the song of the year. I feel like it's really out of place in the context of the album. Like it just does not, when you listen to the album start to finish and you get to Loyalty and then and Pride and then Humble comes along, it just, I don't know, it just kind of comes in out of nowhere and then it ends and there's just, it's just almost like randomly placed. It almost feels like it should have only been a single and that was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you feel like that, Dan?
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. I love that song as well. And yeah, it does like just kind of come out of nowhere and then leave again. But, I mean, it's also not the only banger on there. There's DNA, but DNA, the lyrics I think do fit the overall theme much more than Humble does.
It's just like Humble should have, like, if there wasn't a DNA, maybe Humble should have been the song to start the album, and that would have been okay. But for it to just fit right in the middle of the album seems really strange.
Yeah,
I think it's hard to get it to fit, honestly. It's just, but at the same time, like, without that, without Loyalty, without the song Love, which is kind of like this really nice pop song with basically the Weeknd clone singing the hook. Without those, I would probably feel like this was To Pimp a Butterfly light, because without those like big songs, it feels like this sort of super introspective, artier thing, you know?
But still not quite as, you know, heavy-handed as Dan put it, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I like that though.
It's definitely not as heavy-handed, but I think adding those, you know, quote pop songs is good. It took it out of the realm of just being another Pimp a Butterfly, and I think it kind of made it like a good mix between Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City. Like we talked about, Good Kid has an overarching story, but there's a little bit of finessing in there to get a few things to fit, you know. I mean, probably not as much as in here, but I kind of thought Humble like reminded me a little bit of like Backseat Freestyle. Like it was, you know, that's the big banger on Good Kid, Mad City,
right?
And like, yeah, it's part of the story. Like, you know, his friends got a beat CD and they're freestyling in the back seat, but like really it's just a banger, and he like added a little story to be able to put a banger in there, you know. And Humble, he just basically didn't add that little story at the front,
right? So maybe it was more successful. It's the same trick, but it was just a little more successful. You know, and like sort of the album, or the like song titles all being similar, and then sort of the way the album starts and ends like on the same thing, you know, as if it could play in one continuous loop or something. You know, it's just sort of, I think it's trying to like tie a slightly disjointed mix of songs into something more cohesive, but with some success, like enough success where it doesn't feel like a total mess. I did want to talk about some of like these lyrical themes and stuff like that. It's sort of interesting. I think Kendrick was in a really difficult spot, because I think if you listen to Pimp a Butterfly closely, it's not quite what people make it out to be, because it's sort of like he's stepping into this role as like the, you know, voice of his generation, kind of addressing all these issues that were, you know, just really blowing up at the time with police violence and all this stuff. And but sort of like uncomfortable with it a little bit, you know, like on like Blacker the Berry, he's like being sort of like self-critical of the movement that he's sort of like fronting. And, you know, there's some interesting like nooks and crannies to that. Here, though, he's like totally talking about himself for most of it. And he's talking about like other rappers, you know, not bringing it as hard as him, like the Control verse was and stuff. And it's like, I'm wondering how well he pulls this off. It's a hard trick. Like, even if he didn't totally deserve to be or want to be, he became sort of like this social activist icon. And now he's talking about himself and challenging other rappers to step up their game, but people are still talking about it like it's some social icon thing. I mean, were the lyrics matching the way people talk about Kendrick to you?
I mean, maybe not, but that's happened to other people in the past. Yeah, I mean, Bob Dylan became this voice of a generation. It was something like he never intended, never wanted. You know, it can happen to Kendrick too. And, you know, people were trying to find those stories and whatnot in Dylan's lyrics, and they're going to try to find them in Kendrick's too, even if they're not there. I think they are at least a little here in this record. But I'm kind of glad that he didn't just do another. If he just released another, you know, socio-political record, it would have been boring. It was nice for him to kind of come out of left field and do like a normal album. I don't think people expected that. It's
like how Dylan like stepped right away from the times they are changing after that. Like he was like, all right, I did that. Now I'm gonna go on a different route. But yeah, Darin, what do you think about the lyrical content of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I swear I read this somewhere, but like Kendrick's kind of like made it clear that like he's stepping away from that position that he was in with To Pimp a Butterfly. Like he set out with a goal in mind, and he achieved that. You know, I think he still returns to that a little bit, because I mean, he definitely makes some like timely references to like Donald Trump. You know, he responds to the Geraldo thing, obviously, at the opening. So it's still there, but he doesn't really. He spends a lot more time telling these like almost, you know, fictional like stories, especially, you know,
about himself.
Yeah, about himself. I was thinking of like the last song. Pitchfork really talks about that a lot in the interview and everything.
Is that fictional though?
It's got to be a little bit.
I mean, yeah, it's got to be at least a little. But I mean, Top is like much older than him and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's even a little bit true, it's like pretty crazy.
That's some like grade A, like Biggie level storytelling in rap. Like, that's just, that track is just, I mean, I wish he would do that more. Like just tell little narratives, write little stories like Biggie would do, because that track is great. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is like some of the lyrics like don't match up exactly, or just sort of confuse me a little bit. So like, you know, the start of DNA or the end of Blood, you know, we get the Fox News clip. And so, you know, I'm like, okay, it's like political Kendrick, whatever. Fox on some show, Geraldo is like bashing him for being anti-police. And then the song DNA is about like how he's like the best rapper alive. And, you know, Pitchfork and everybody are like, wow, it's this amazing takedown of Fox and Geraldo. And I'm like, I don't know if that totally matches. And then we get like on the song Lust, he goes into this little thing about like the day after the election and how everybody was like horrified, but then we all kind of went back to like doing whatever it was we were doing. But then the hook of that song is like, let me put the head in. And so sometimes I was just like, this message is not
that's what I was like getting at. Like he just kind of sprinkles these like bits in, but he does not like drill down and like spend the whole song on the subject.
Well, like I said, that this is like more like a, you know, a normal rap album, and I think your normal rap album kind of does that sometimes. You know, I think a lot of people do throw a little political jab here and there, but then the song's not about that, and I think that that's okay. And I like that he did that. I like that he didn't completely ignore what's going on in the world, but he didn't spin.
Yeah, but he's not trying to make a grand statement or like speak to these people, these diehard Pimp a Butterfly fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very introspective. I think a lot of this album is, you know, and like the moments that he does mention things like Donald Trump or whatever, it's almost just like that was just a thought he had, and then let's move on. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I do think that's cool. I like it more that way. But yeah, it's just the way people talk about it, you know, and they did this with To Pimp a Butterfly as well. Like they're turning him into something he's not exactly. Right. And, you know, I don't really see that as the central focus of this album. But what were some highlights for you guys?
I mean, obviously DNA is like just the most straight up banger ever. And same with Humble. I'm sick of like Rihanna being on every rap album, but I say that, but then I really liked Loyalty. Like that song is like very catchy and like just really good. She kind of fits there, but everyone else, please stop using Rihanna.
I love the kind of groove of the third track. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that is a good track.
Yeah, I mean that was just for it to come in after DNA. It just felt so perfect, I guess, in terms of sequencing between those three tracks. It was just really works well. Yeah, I mean, I love Loyalty. I love that song Love. I mean, it is like a obvious pop single, but man, it's a good one. What did you guys think of the Triple X song?
And the
with Bono?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just him. That was just him at the end, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, obviously I got a little worried. I like fucking hate U2. Like they're god awful. But honestly, the first time I listened to it, I like forgot that U2 was like on a song, and I didn't even notice. Right. I like went back.
Yeah, you don't really unless you're paying attention.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I thought he used Bono better than anyone, including
better than Bono uses Bono.
Yeah, has ever used him before. So maybe he is a genius.
It's also weird because like the actual song of that song is like the hardest banger possible.
Exactly.
And then we just get this weird outro with Bono like singing kind of crooning.
And it just doesn't sound like Bono. right?
I think it does, but that was something that was kind of, it's just like not like, layered and reverb like it usually is. But that was kind of weird to me sometimes on the tracks. Like DNA, it was sort of cool how like the beat changed dramatically. That song changes dramatically, but then actually a lot of songs do that.
Yeah, they do.
And it makes like sort of ADD like feature to this where it's like the beat, it never sits still. I mean, is he just like, what's up with that?
I think that's
like that.
I think that's like a thing people do because of Kanye. Like a lot that Kanye does that a lot, where like either just like on Yeezus, like that children's choir just starts singing like out of nowhere and stuff. Like I think that's a thing people are just biting from Kanye, who probably has ADD.
Well, see, I like the fact that like Kanye like separated like that, what do you call it, like Frank's song or something like that. I think
Frank's track, yeah,
right. I think when you have like sudden shifts in ideas and stuff, like why not just split it off and give it its own track, even if it's like 30 seconds or something. I don't know.
No, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean,
sometimes like the U2 thing is like so disconnected from the actual song.
That could be like a little that could be
like the outro of DNA is totally appropriate. It's like a cool ending. I also like how it sounds like the beat is like distorted to fuck, like those Vine videos where people are joking about how loud the music is. Like the beat is actually doing that. But it's kind of cool anyway.
Speaking of the DNA, that like the second part, that like sample that he keeps, the give me some ganja or whatever. That sample comes from the same thing that the samples on Runaway come from. Ooh. Like you all look like beautiful stars tonight. Same thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow, really?
Mm-hmm. It's like a Rick James like live.
It's like
thing.
Used the same way too.
Mm-hmm.
Damn,
exactly.
Get your own ideas, Kendrick.
Yep. Or Mike will, really, but
yeah, true. Okay, I don't know. Anything else anybody wants to talk about, or should we talk about scores?
I guess we'll talk about scores. I mean, would they give it a 9.2?
Highest of the year.
Just 0.1 below Pimp a Butterfly. I think I agree with that score. It's a great record. It's not like a perfect 10.
Right.
And I don't think it will ever be, but I mean, this is definitely the best album of the year so far, and it's fantastic, and everyone should hear it, whether you are a Kendrick fan or not. I think this would turn you around if you're not. So yeah, I think I completely agree with the score here.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the best album of the year right now, and I think it has a very good chance of staying right there. The way this year's looking, I would bring the score up a bit. I'd bring it to like a 9.5. I mean, I think this is I think this is a great album. I really do, and I think it's going to get better with time. I kind of hope it doesn't catch on like the way Pimp a Butterfly did, because I swear like Pimp a Butterfly did not get that kind of attention when it first came out, but it just sort of slowly rose and became like, oh, this is like the greatest album of all time or whatever.
Yeah, kind of like when that song All Right became like the unofficial anthem of like the Black Lives Matter movement. Everybody started chanting it at these rallies and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I don't think that this album will do something like that, but I mean, I see myself listening to this quite a bit for the rest of this year, for sure. What did you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I think it's going to be one of those records. It's just going to be like sort of overshadowed by To Pimp a Butterfly, like in popular consciousness. I think it'll be like this really cool gem. Like if the rest of his records are like 5s, then this will be like the 4.5 that's really great or something like that. Looking back at it. And I think people will overlook it, and it'll always have a kind of fresh quality to it for that reason. It'll be like the one that people talk about least. Of course, everybody's talking about it right now because it just came out, but I think it's got that quality. And sometimes those are great records. Those are sometimes really highlights for me in people's discographies, because they're sort of like the cool, sort of slightly stranger ones. And I think just sort of the messiness of it, while it sort of, I don't know, befuddled me throughout the week. I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. How it feels just a little bit messy, like it's pulling in a couple directions at once, and I don't know how political it is, or if he's just talking about himself, or what I'm supposed to think. But it's the kind of thing that is really interesting that I think I'll be returning to personally, even if like the rest of pop culture doesn't return to it that much. So I basically like the score. I think a 9.2 is really solid, and of course a BNM for one of the biggest artists there is right now. This is like the first really big event of the year. You mentioned it, Darin. Like by this time last year, like we had Black Star, David Bowie had died, Prince had died. We had like Lemonade,
St. Pablo,
Radiohead was
Life of Pablo.
The Life of Pablo. Radiohead's album was like either just about to come out or already had. Like this is the first big event of the year. 2017 needs to get its shit together.
It really does. I mean, this is the first like. But this album and Arca are basically the only albums I like will listen to again in my life that we've reviewed so far.
Well, maybe you will listen to the one we're about to talk about.
We'll find out
next.
Well, at least Kendrick is contributing to the world, making the world a better place.
Oh yeah. For I mean, the ranking of the world before Kendrick was looking pretty bleak. 2017
savior coming in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on. Right, you just heard a clip from our next album, Gas's Narco Pop, which on Friday got an 8.8 BNM, also very high, and a review by Mark Richardson. A little bit of background. Last year, we reviewed a couple records from Gas's BNR career-spanning box set, and we went into a lot of detail on the history of the project. We'll keep it shorter here, or at least try to, and focus mostly on the background of this album in particular. But if you're interested in hearing more, check out that previous episode on iTunes or at metaphoricmusic.com. Gas is an experimental ambient techno project from Wolfgang Voigt, who is one of electronic music's most revered figures. Pitchfork actually compares his influence to that of Brian Eno. In addition to running the iconic Compact label, Voigt has released tons of music under many different aliases, but none of his projects are as beloved as the 4 albums he released as Gas between 1996 and 2000. The first Gas albums were very dark and droney, burying romantic and 20th century classical samples underneath thumping bass pulses and a haze of reverb that made it sound like a weird avant-garde club was popping off somewhere in the middle of the woods. I know that sounds like completely fucking ridiculous, but it sounds just like that. But 2000's Pop, which until now was thought to be the very last Gas album, took that ambient sound in a brighter and more kind of upbeat direction. Its sounds were sort of beautiful instead of ominous and spooky. And this earned the record classic status amongst even like non-electronic fans. It's very, very, very much beloved. 17 years later, Voigt has surprised everyone by releasing the follow-up nobody expected, but instead of returning to that sunny pop sound, Narco Pop takes the dark symphonic drones of the project's earliest albums and widens the scope to epic cinematic proportions. Pitchfork's glowing 8.8 is the third highest score of the year so far, and surprisingly, Narco Pop is currently RateYourMusic.com's highest ranked album of 2017. So what is your guys' previous familiarity with Gas?
Well, I mean, we reviewed a few albums back in the day on the podcast. I've listened to that whole box set and stuff. I regret not buying it when it first came out.
Yeah.
It's expensive now.
It looks awesome.
I know. I should have done it. So yeah, I would consider myself a fan at this point.
Was I on the episode when we reviewed?
I think you sat out that review.
Yeah, I think just
so actually, you need to review one more album before it's actually your 50th episode. you sat out on like 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, so this would be my first experience with Gas.
Yeah, I discovered Gas when we reviewed that box set. I couldn't believe I'd never heard him before because I seriously fell in love with it. And actually, when I sort of realized that this album was going to be coming out soon, I felt compelled for some reason to check Tidal, because before all those Gas albums weren't on Tidal, which I use primarily, and they were all on it. So I was really excited to get to listen to them in Lossless, and I had been listening to them like a lot last week, sort of in preparation for this. So yeah, I'm a new fan, but definitely a big fan. So let's try to describe the sound of this record. I guess, Dan, you'll be able to compare it to the other stuff, but let's start with Darin. Since you're a new listener, how would you put this in your own words?
So I guess the best way that I can initially describe it is like it has a real like movie soundtrack quality to it. You know, it's definitely like ambient, but it's not like your sparse type of ambient. It's got a lot of more depth to it, I guess I would call it. You know, there's a lot of synth work, string work, I guess, happening. There's a song, I think it's like in the middle where there's like almost like war drums going on. So for me, I have a hard time, telling what one song from the next. I can't really even speak to like the different numbered tracks or anything like that. It just kind of all sounded like one. Yeah,
no titles. Thing. No titles really on this.
Right. But yeah, I mean, the review mentions like, what is it? Badalamenti? Did I say that right, Dan?
Yes. Badalamenti.
The soundtrack to Mulholland Drive.
Right. And, we didn't review that one, though. We reviewed...
No, we did Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks. So, like, it reminded me kind of that, but there seemed to be, some more, I don't know, I don't want to say rhythm, but just... It sounded like louder, like Twin Peaks sounded very quiet, if I recall, right. By comparison. And that's probably an awful way to describe the sound, but it's the best I can do.
Not easy to describe, really not easy.
It really isn't. I think you did a decent job. You spoke to like not being able to tell where like one song begins and one ends. I think that's on purpose. I think most ambient albums, and definitely like most good ones, play as like one song, and there's just kind of spaces for whatever reason. And in fact, doesn't like the like deluxe version of this has like the whole album in one track as like a bonus track?
Yeah, which it does.
Yeah, it makes like no sense whatsoever. Like I don't understand why that's a thing. But there you go. So I really do think it is supposed to be one. But to add a little bit, you said, Gabe, at the front, like that whole like it sounds like a techno party in like the forest, and this one kind of brings that back. It always kind of like parts of it like sound like far away, even though like, and it sounds like you're outside in the woods. It's almost like I almost wish I liked to go outside, because this would be like a nice album to like walk in the woods, but you're not getting me in the woods.
Well, now you don't have to, because this kind of does.
That's true, from the comfort of my couch. But it definitely has that cinematic feel, like Darin mentioned, and I think the review mentions. I don't know that I would compare it much at all to Twin Peaks. I think Twin Peaks is much more active of an album than this one. But it's been a while since I've watched Mulholland Drive, but from memory, I think it does fit in that field a little bit better.
Yeah, it's it does feel cinematic, but it's just like huge. It just feels like really widescreen sort of. Mm-hmm. But it's also like very, I don't know, kind of motionless. Like it'll just be like this huge sound that just sort of like hangs there. Like it just hangs there like a fog over you or something. Like it's not changing drastically or anything. Sometimes we'll get like these thumps underneath. But yeah, it definitely sounds far away. It's the kind of thing, when I first listened to this, I was like listening to my car, and like I would have to pause the music and be like, I can't tell if there's just like somebody like near me listening to loud rap music or what. It's really like that. And actually, like you play it around your house, like while you're walking around doing stuff, and it's like, it doesn't matter if you're standing right near it or if you're far away from it. It's like the same deal. It's a very strange thing. I think like in the previous albums, I got that forest feeling more, because there's sort of like this, always like this crunchiness. I don't know if it's like, I think it's probably field recordings and stuff like that he's sort of incorporating, but like this sort of organic sound, like always like a crunchiness, or sometimes it'll sound like, like when bugs are, whatever they do, chirping. I don't know what bugs do.
Yeah, like cicadias or cicadas, whatever the fuck they're called.
We're like scientists. Yeah, it'll sound like that. But this one, I feel like had less of it. And was just more like this huge, like lush sound. And we don't get like any of the slightly upbeat, like sunny warmth of pop. We get like just the darkest, like thudding. Was it scarier and like more ominous to you than those early Gas albums, Dan?
I wish I would have listened to all the Gas albums again before listening to this one, because it's been a little bit. But from memory, I think it's definitely different than pop, and I think I like that. I prefer the like darker, spookier ambient stuff. But yeah, I think so. What do you think? I
kind of think so, but it just, I don't know. Pitchfork makes a point of saying that like basically the early pop stuff had this sort of like bedroom, like lo-fi-ness to it, sort of, and this just sounds like really huge. Like he's got the nicest studio.
It does sound
the stuff.
It does sound like his equipment levels have gone up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up, I was reading an interview with him last year when he released the box set, and maybe you could speak to this, Darin, but he sort of talks about like, he's this German dude, and he's sort of interested in like the whole history of like German Romanticism. We're thinking of like Wagner and like these composers of like late Romanticism in Germany who were really obsessed with like their national identity as Germans. There's this whole mythology around like the German woods, which are like so romanticized in this whole, culture of that time. Like the Grimm fairy tales and all this stuff. And he's like been talking about how he's like really interested in combining that like German mythology, that history of German art with like dance music or electronic music in some way. I mean, Darin, did this bring like Wagner to mind?
It did, actually, largely because of just the denseness of the sound. You know what I mean? It's just huge. You called it like a widescreen, and like when I think of Wagner, I think of like just this thunderous, orchestra playing for 4 hours. You know what I mean? Like a 4-hour opera or whatever. Like,
right.
It's always like, I don't know. You just think of like Gothic, not in the sense of like, My Chemical Romance Gothic, but like, Gothic art and, lots of, dark blacks and shadowy things and shadowy woods and stuff like that. Like it really, it's what's one thing that you can definitely, I feel like definitely happens with like ambient music is you can definitely like visualize things. Like I guess the good ambient music really helps you visualize, and this felt very similar to like the sort of visualizations I get from like, listening to Wagner or like watching, Wagner.
Yeah. And I should mention like this, I feel like, will you do agree with me, Dan? Like the strings were much more upfront and pronounced. Like before they were always so buried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really were more in the forefront this time around.
So did you like that, or how did you guys feel about this record?
I liked the record. I thought it was really good, especially, I mean, I know he's been doing other stuff under other names,
right?
But this to bring back this Gas style 17 years later, that's a hard thing to do. I mean, Swans is basically the only band that's come back after such a lengthy and been good.
Well, we got Portishead, who we'll talk about later, who pulled that off. Well, My Bloody Valentine. There are a couple, but it's rare.
We'll agree to disagree there.
I hope you're not talking shit about the last My Bloody Valentine album.
I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent. It was okay.
Whoa.
Pause the tape.
I didn't want to start a whole MBV argument over here.
Hell?
It was good. It was good.
Next week we'll be discussing every MBV record.
We'll get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, we should. You ruined my train of thought here. I don't remember what I was babbling on about, but
just that you were impressed that he was able to.
Come back. Exactly. Yeah, because that's. And
do you feel like he's adding something new, or is he sort of like rehashing a little bit, or what?
I mean, it's hard to say because like a lot of this kind of ambient stuff like does kind of all end up being pretty similar, especially like between one person. But I think this adds to it. I'm like glad to have this album in the mix. It's not like I'll never listen to this one again. I'll only listen to the old ones. I think I'll stick this one in as much as I stick the other ones in. I mean, maybe that's because like you, I somehow didn't know about Gas until we reviewed it. So, I mean, maybe if I was like a longtime fan, I'd have like a much bigger affinity and nostalgia for the old records and see this one as some sort of cash in. But I don't see it that way at all right now.
How did you fare, Darin? I guess this didn't work too well at the gym or anything.
Nah, it's not really. It's not really a gym kind of record. Not really something I would prefer you to play at a house party.
Yeah, definitely not.
Darin's two ways to rate music.
Yeah, that's how you test them.
He's like a frat boy, basically.
GTL.
Yep. Can I go club into this, or can I go to the gym with this? Yeah, I mean, it's not really for me. I don't think I'm going to listen to it again. I don't really think I'm interested in listening to any of the past records, to be honest. So, obviously it'd be a little unfair of me to give it a really bad score. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's decent. I can appreciate it for what it is, but I don't really feel qualified enough to give it a fair score.
Oh, so you're not even gonna? I mean, you can just be honest. What score would?
I'd probably give it like a 7.
Oh,
just wanted me to give a score so you could.
The two of you, I can't understand it. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I was like a little bit, like just the slightest bit underwhelmed. I mean, but it felt like the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. And I think it's sort of like a hard work listen to me. And I think I will continue to listen to it. And I think you're right, Dan, that I don't see it as like any less quality than the other Gas stuff, which I admittedly liked more immediately. It's just that this is like so dense. I feel like there's so much to work through, and I'm going to keep doing that. Right now, I think 8.8 is a little high. I could see myself getting there, but it feels more like something like an 8.3 BNM, because I really just don't think this is going to... I think it's worth hearing for everybody, even if you're not into this kind of thing, but I don't think it's going to blow your mind unless you're really into this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't give a score when I was babbling on about My Bloody Valentine there, but I think I would lower it slightly as well. I think an 8.8 is a little high. I'd give it like an 8.5. If we're gonna split hairs here. I think it is something that even if you don't like ambient music, I think everyone can appreciate. And I think if you've never experienced ambient music, I think if you like this, you might it'd be worth checking out other things. I think it's like a decent entry point for ambient stuff because of that cinematic feel. That's something that people always that aren't familiar with those kind of things. They like when it sounds like the movie soundtrack, which is good. That's an easy way to get into it. So I think this record is good for that. So it definitely deserves to be an M. But yeah, I'd say like an 8.5.
All right. Well, ready to move on?
Yeah. Okay, you just heard Meredith Monk, Key, which on Saturday got an 8.7 BNR and a review by Seth Coulter Walls. This was originally released in 1971, but it was just reissued on vinyl for Record Store Day, like we talked about at the top of the episode. Meredith Monk is one of the first and greatest performance artists. Over her long career, she's worked in film, dance, theater, opera, and more. But she's most known for her very avant-garde, wordless vocal innovations. Key is Monk's first album. She called it, quote, invisible theater. And indeed, it features abstract monologues from other actors, guest vocalists, and musicians, and even the sounds of people just walking across the stage. Some of her later work is more well-known and critically acclaimed, but Key is still regarded as a minor classic of minimalist and avant-garde composition. So either of you have any previous familiarity with Meredith Monk?
I do not. I've heard her name thrown around a lot, but I've just never listened to her.
This is my first time hearing of her.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't heard, but I've heard the name thrown around. So go ahead and try your best to describe the sound of this record for us.
I would love to hear.
I want to hear Darin.
Oh God,
yeah.
I was gonna say I wanted to hear Gabe attempt to recreate the The vocals. Really interesting.
I couldn't.
So, this is definitely a unique record.
That's good.
Just treading lightly.
I think that I had no idea what to expect. I will say, though, that I was pleasantly surprised. But I think the vocal, I really, where else to begin other than the vocals? I mean, the first track is like a cappella. This person has an incredible, she sings, well, does she sing? She makes a lot of interesting sounds with her voice. Let's just put it that way.
Well put.
Yeah. But I think that it's fair to maybe try to think of other artists that maybe by some distance have there's some sort of relation. And I think of maybe like Bjork, maybe like a Joanna Newsom. When you first hear them, you're just kind of like, maybe it's a little off-putting. You know what I mean?
It's kind of Yoko.
Yoko was the other one. Yep, that's a good one. Definitely.
But like art school version of those people, like very, very art school version.
Exactly. I imagine like the crowd all in like black turtlenecks, and smoking during the whole show, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to describe. It's obvious you're struggling a little bit. I mean, so for the most part, there's like a little organ accompaniment to her, and it's usually playing some sort of like very minimal pattern, sometimes kind of lullaby-ish. There are some a cappella moments, and like sometimes her voice sounds like just like a theremin or something, like wordless, just sounds like bending and warping. Sometimes in kind of like a microtone way, like it sounds off key, but it's not totally off key because it's sort of like, I don't know. It's quite actually an impressive command of the voice. Other times she sounds like a giggling fucking lunatic or something. I mean, it's like
that one where it sounds like she's literally laughing. I mean, she's like ha 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 ha.
I know, it's insane.
Yeah.
What would you add, Dan?
I mean, I think you guys hit the nail on the head there. I like the songs that were basically just minimalist songs, with the organ and everything. Those were great. The vocal stuff, I mean, it was like, I'm a Yoko fan. I love Yoko Ono. But this was kind of like Yoko to the 10 level. It was hard to tell if she was crazy. Yeah, at times I'm a little speechless.
It's like
here.
Comedic feeling.
Yeah, but
I mean?
maybe
like
it's supposed to be because it's like a play or whatever. So
right.
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. So obviously there's some sort of like, I guess when it comes to Meredith Monk, there's always like some sort of visual component. Sometimes like film plays. Sometimes there's dancing. Sometimes there's a little bit of everything. Choreography. So it feels like we're getting sort of half the picture here. And, and it's kind of strange. Like some of these tracks, like these Vision 1, Vision 2, Vision 3 are like speeches, but it's like they're recorded live, like very far away or something. It's like
a single microphone on a stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like this was a live play and it was like almost even someone in the audience recorded it. That's probably on purpose.
I don't think it... Yeah, I don't think it was. I think it was like some sort of intentional decision. But yeah, it's very strange. You just feel like you're getting like a weird half picture of this. And sometimes that half picture is like some weird audience like bootleg or something.
Yeah, I'm seeing here, looking at the Wikipedia, it was recorded in someone's loft and then a gallery in Los Angeles. So it might have actually just kind of been like we were saying. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I felt like it was kind of pretty in a weird way. Well, however, I mean, like the song Fat Stream, I think is like really kind of gorgeous in a weird way. But you said you kind of liked it, Darin.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love this. I just found the whole thing very entrancing. Like I when I was listening to it, I just kind of felt very drawn to it. I didn't want to turn it off. I felt like I was like there watching this performance, and if I were sitting in a room with a black turtleneck on, like I would. She just seemed so fascinating that like I just was sort of on the edge of my seat to see like, well, what is she going to do next with her voice? You know what I mean? Like I just found it so interesting. The little vision things were sort of weird, and I didn't really care for any of those. But like every time that she was actually doing, I guess, what she would call a song, I was just really drawn to it. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised by that, but I mean, it is kind of cool. I found it kind of cool. I found it like, I mean, it's only 36 minutes long, but I still found it like I didn't need all that, and it's like I sort of thought it was interesting how much crazy stuff she was doing with her voice, but then there was like on one hand interesting, on the other hand the listenability felt low to me. Did you feel that way, Dan?
Yeah, I enjoyed finding out about this and like discovering it, but I don't see myself like ever listening to it again. It's just one of those things that was like, it's like a movie. I've seen plenty of movies that were like good, I enjoyed, but I'll never watch it again. And I felt like that with this album. It's strange, and it was something new, I guess, but I don't really want to revisit it too much.
Do you think the BNR is warranted?
I don't know. I mean, the BNR I think signifies that like everyone who cares about music should listen to this. Where is like, I don't know if everyone needs to hear this. I feel like if you're digging deep into minimalism and stuff, like sure, pop this one on. It'll give you something new. But I don't think like your average Joe needs to hear this album really.
But yet you love the Shags. You love the Shags, but you're gonna hate on Meredith Monk. That makes no sense at all.
I'm not hating on her. I just don't think that this one is as necessary. Let's not get on the whole Shags thing. But that's outsider art. This is not outsider art. This is solidly art school art.
Yeah. I don't know if it needs a BNR. I mean, I think it's interesting, but like I said, the actual listenability is pretty low. So I don't know. I guess I would lower the score a little, but I just don't know if everybody needs to hear it. But do you feel differently, Darin?
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking to a couple of plebs here. Seriously,
we finally Patricianed up Darin.
I thought both of you would be all over this. So like, no, I think the BNR is like totally deserving. It's one of those albums that like I appreciate the fact that like Pitchfork brings up, and it's something that I probably would have never come across. I think it's really cool. I'm really interested in checking out her other stuff. I mean, the listenability, it's not like, I'm going to throw it on while I'm barbecuing or something, obviously. But
at a party.
At the gym.
Party, gym, barbecue, probably not going to work there. But, there's times where I'm just alone, maybe reading a book or something. Yeah, I think that would...
and you just want to hear a lady yelling.
Giggling like an idiot. All right. Well, we should get a move on. We're already running a little late, but before we move on to that next song, we just want to remind you to hit that subscribe button and help us out a lot by leaving a nice review in the iTunes store or telling a friend about the podcast. Thanks so much to all the people who have already done those things. Also, email, tweet, or Facebook message us. You can follow along with Pitchfork's reviews and tell us your thoughts about the albums we'll be discussing, or you can ask us anything at all. Tell us, you hate our dissing of Meredith Monk and you agree with Darin and you would listen at a barbecue. I don't know, whatever. metaphoricmusic@gmail.com is that email, and social media @metaphoricmusic. Now let's hear a bit of that Sunday review.
That was a snippet of our Sunday classic, which was Portishead's Dummy, which received a 9.5 in a review by Philip Sherburne. A little bit of background on this record. It was originally released in 1994. Massive Attack had invented trip-hop with their debut album Blue Lines in 1991, and Bjork had introduced electronica to the alternative scene with her own debut, which was actually called Debut, in 1993, but Portishead took these elements to a whole new level of popularity with Dummy, one of the 90s most defining albums. Amazingly, Portishead had never performed live and was barely a band before the release of their first album. Mastermind Jeff Barrow was just some 22-year-old turntablist and hip-hop enthusiast. Singer Beth Gibbons had quote, probably done more singing in her bedroom than on stage, end quote, according to Jeff. And guitarist Adrian Utley only joined after co-producing the album and ending up guesting on most of the tracks. The recording techniques were pretty out of the left field as well. Barrow used a few samples on the album, but for most of it, he assembled some musicians to create the kinds of things he would like to sample before feeding those recordings back into his samplers and sometimes even pressing them onto vinyl dub plates and scratching with them. This all resulted in a unique, moody sound that evoked the dark sensuality of 60s spy movies and film noir. It was simultaneously retro and forward-thinking, which fit the 90s perfectly and earned them an instant classic and the next big thing titles from everyone. Portishead immediately had dozens of imitators, and trip-hop became the trendiest thing going for almost the rest of the decade. Basically, all of these imitators have since been forgotten, but after 2 more classics, with one huge gap between them, it's safe to say that Portishead, and Dummy in particular, have achieved legend status. Do you guys have any previous familiarity with Portishead and this album specifically?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I know all their albums and whatnot, but I wouldn't consider myself a fan.
Oh, you wouldn't?
Wow.
I would not, no.
Spoiler.
Why not? You don't like Portishead?
Oh, I mean, we'll get to that. I mean,
you are
maybe I do, maybe I don't.
Fucking up tonight.
Maybe
Dan.
I do, maybe I don't.
Fucking up.
I'm just saying I'm not like following them, you know?
God.
I'm not in the van following them around town. Maybe I like that.
God.
We don't spoil.
You just said you're not a fan. What the?
All right. We'll get to it.
Doesn't mean I don't.
He's just trying to tease. Keep listeners on board here. They can't turn away. No, I mean, I love this album. I love Portishead. If you don't love Portishead, you're like a complete fucking loser. They're so great, and I think this album is so great. I mean, it feels a little dated because it's so 90s. It's like so 90s, but it's still utterly fantastic. I mean, I basically just adore them. I adore every album of theirs. How do you feel, Darin?
I, too, am not a loser, and I love Portishead. This album in particular, this is the first album that I listened to from them. You know, I definitely did listen to the other 2, but this is the one that I've probably listened to more than anything. So how would you guys describe the sound?
So it's pretty much, I mean, I guess this album sort of helped define what trip hop is. I mean, people say like Massive Attack invented trip hop, but if you listen to Blue Lines, it's a little bit of like they're feeling out a number of things at once. It's just not like trip hop fully emerged, you know, quite yet. Portishead, I think, sort of crystallized the trip hop sound. And so we get like these sort of hip hop-ish beats with this really like ambient, like sort of, you know, there's always like a guitar like strumming some cool like spy film, noir film like line with a lot of like tremolo on the guitar. So it's like sort of wobbling in and out. And then we get like these occasional DJ scratches and stuff, and it's just like it's the most 90s thing ever. But I can't explain like how fucking cool it sounds. And like her voice is like just she should just sing every spy soundtrack there ever is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you described it pretty well. It's that trip hop feel, and I think it's early trip hop type situation here, and I don't agree with her singing every spy song.
You better find some love for this, or I'm gonna flip. But okay, Darin, go ahead.
I mean, to be honest, when I was first listening to Portishead, I never really got, spy films or, noir films. I just never really thought about it like that. I just thought that the sound was, so cool, and just something like, I don't know, like in the way that like when I listen to Radiohead, it's just so uniquely Radiohead. You know what I mean? Even if there's imitators out there. Yeah, like I just feel like I can. And when they came back with their third album, it was, it just felt like they had never left. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess. But it was just, they had a distinctive sound despite imitators, despite Massive Attack or whatever. I just think that they really did a great job, which is like, I kind of blew my mind that like they weren't like playing music and not really a band or whatever. Like that just,
I know,
that's fucking nuts, to be honest. But because they sound so like they've really got it together. You know what I mean? Like they've ironed the sound out.
Yeah, it's one of those debuts that's just like a band is like fully formed from the get-go.
Yeah.
And, I think that they develop in a lot of interesting ways as they go along in their career. But, I mean, this is like the most fully formed thing. It's just, it's so Portishead is like the only way to describe it. But I also think it's so perfect for the 90s because like the 90s were, I mean, this is the same year that Pulp Fiction came out, right? And like the 90s just were so into this like weird mishmash of things. So you've got like what I think is sort of reminiscent of like spy films or like even like a Billie Holiday style kind of like jazz singer, lounge singer
Black
thing going on with like, DJ scratches and hip hop beats. Like, you know how like the 90s just fucking loved like stuff like that all crashing together.
Yeah, the 90s was like, let's take two genres that don't belong together and put them together. That is like the most 90s thing. Like what's that Cotton Eye Joe song that's like it's like a hoedown and like a rap song,
buddy.
But even like
it is
on
a classic.
the better end of that, it's like Pulp Fiction like mashes together like 50s boxing films with like blaxploitation films with like sort of spy. It's like just they love this mishmash thing, and I think this is just like right time, right moment so much.
I completely agree with you there. It is definitely that 90s feel to it, and because of that, I think it does feel like pretty dated. It's like I know when this album came out without looking at it.
To the day, pretty much.
It's like you know when this came out, and I think that a classic is supposed to be timeless. It's which doesn't mean you can't tell when it came out, but I think it's like I don't know, something so rooted in a time period. I don't know if that can be a classic. Maybe I'm splitting hairs, but
yeah, I think. Well, I mean, are you telling me that like Nirvana's Nevermind or In Utero doesn't sound like 1991 or 1993?
Like Prince doesn't sound like the 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah, those do, but I mean, Nirvana still there's still rock bands that you could tell by the production and stuff like that, but it's still there's other bands from other decades that sound similar, if that makes any sense. Same with Prince. I think you could tell like Prince because of the production more than anything else.
I mean, I disagree. I mean, I think that what makes this a classic is that it still sounds good today. Like, yeah, it sounds like the 90s, but it's still like enjoyable.
Yeah, today. But it feels a little dated. I mean, Gabe even said it feels like a little dated. And something that's classic, like the definition of that word
at all,
it shouldn't know, because classic means timeless. And so to feel dated
sounded
I don't think
dated.
I don't think it's that dated. I don't think it's as dated as this album.
I think it is, but I think it does hurt it a little bit. But I mean, I agree that this sounds a little dated and that it does hurt it a little bit. But it's like, I think as we continue to like get farther away from the 90s, it won't feel so much that way, or it won't matter so much. I mean, like like Prince just sounds so much like the 80s, and it's part of because he was using like cutting edge equipment in the 80s that was just coming out, and he was like pushing up against the very walls of what was possible at that time. I think Portishead is kind of doing similar things and helped invent the sound, just like Prince did in the 80s, helped invent a sound that became very definitive of the 90s. And it sounds kind of dated, and I guess it does hurt a little bit, but I don't think it'll be an issue for very long. Like at the core, these are like great songs and great productions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree that I like the. I really do not like the singer, if Portishead. I really don't.
Why?
I really don't like her voice. It just kind of feels a little tacked on to me.
What?
I like the.
Are you shitting me?
I like the music. I dig trip hop and whatnot, and I think that they probably are more the inventors of it, or at least the solidifiers of it than Massive Attack. But just her voice, it just seems so unnecessary to have someone like sing over this. Not to steal your thunder, Gabe, but you said that like Sade sounds like a mom version of Portishead, and I completely agree. Like Portishead is a better Sade, but it's still a Sade. You know,
I was really hoping we were not going to say that name.
So defend yourself, Darin.
Look, I don't think that Portishead really relates at all to Sade, despite what All Music may say. Okay, like I think that this is far more. You know, it's like it's darker. I don't know. It's a totally different vibe. You know what I mean? I get a totally different vibe listening to this.
And I don't think I don't agree.
You could take the singer and you could apply her probably to like Sade's music. You know what I mean? And it would probably work fine. But that doesn't mean that like.
What it is like, the Portishead happened, and then some executive was like, let's take this but make it a little more mom friendly, and then Sade was born. You know, I'm saying Portishead is much better. This is a much better record than Sade, but it's still in that Sade.
We should clarify it would be the opposite.
Sade was first.
Sade was first.
Well, okay.
Portishead.
Well, that's maybe worse then, but
They took something mom and made it really great.
Yeah, they're like, let's take
There's something admirable in that.
I think I guess maybe, but
no, I mean, I just thought, I didn't mean it as a knock when I said it, like whatever last week or the week before when we talked about Sade. I just felt like the Sade album sounded quite trip hopish, and just the way she sort of croons like in this like, you know, smoky like cocktail lounge kind of way is sort of similar to the way that Portishead singer Beth Gibbons does. And I think Beth Gibbons is much more interesting, both as a vocalist and just the music that's surrounding her is obviously more interesting. But, you know, I guess it's sort of a dead end to argue about that. But I just can't believe that you don't like her. I mean, like, it's like this perfect fit to the music. And it's like something you would never think of in your head. Like you would never... You know, imagine just being in 1993 and being like imagining an album like this. You couldn't imagine it because the idea that all these parts are going to come together and work, and that like this, like smoky, sensual sort of like forlorn vocal or something is going to work on like this weird ambient like hip hop beats, like jazzy guitar thing. I mean,
no, I agree with you.
It comes together flawlessly. Like Darin said, it just sounds like so Portishead.
I'll agree that this isn't something you would think would work, but like we already talked about, like that was the 90s, like sticking two things together and seeing what happens. And yeah, this one was on the more successful side of things, but I really think that this would be a much better album if it was instrumental.
My God.
I'm so offended.
Yeah, you can't have Portishead without Beth Gibbons. You just can't.
You can't.
Well, then, I guess no Portishead for me.
That's ridiculous. I'm shocked. I just assumed. Sometimes I try to like take into consideration, like if I'm like writing up one of these intros, that I'm like, oh, this is one that we all adore, so I can like sort of write glowingly about it in the intro. But I'm flabbergasted. Are you flabbergasted?
I am actually. I'm totally shocked.
It's been a while since I've done a real contrarian thing. So
yeah, this is contrarian as fuck. It's super edgy. I mean, I can guarantee. I will put money on it. If any listener has not heard this album before, you will adore it from the first fucking notes. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. Go listen to the first song. What's it? Roads. Track 8.
Mysterion.
Yeah, well, Mysterion's is track 1, but then the track 8, I mean, just there's like nothing
Strangers.
There's just nothing else like it.
And there's nothing else like it, and it's going to instantly, I mean, it's going to be in your brain. I mean, I remember the first time I heard this, like from the get-go, it just like took hold of me. I think it did that for the whole world.
Yeah, I mean, okay. We'll agree to disagree. I think if you're hearing this for the first time, you'll say, oh man, yeah, the 90s that was a fun time.
Oh my God.
I mean, the 90s were fun. I enjoyed them, the
90s were the best decade.
Yeah, no.
The 90s were the best. That's my theory. The 90s were the best decade for music, but we'll get into that another time. I guess we're already running a little long. We're not going to make any fucking headway with Dan.
No, you're not.
But I would give this a 10. I admit it sounds a little dated. I actually cannot fucking believe that Pitchfork. I mean, they give this 0.2 more than that stupid Sade album, and
it's a bit of a.
If you're gonna like throw out a 10 for Liquid, with their like fucking 3.5 songs that are great, you're not gonna give this a fucking 10. But I would give it a 10. A little dated sounding, but it's still it's everything gets a little dated sounding. It's still like a perfect record, and I actually think like their last album, Third, from I guess quite a while ago now, is even better than this.
I was going to ask you if you thought Dummy was the best, but wow, okay.
No, Third gets like a little. Have you listened to Third, Dan?
Yeah, I've listened to all their albums. I don't hate them. I think you're getting me wrong. Yeah, if they were
don't start backtracking now.
Don't start backpedaling.
I just don't
hedging those.
I don't love them, but like if they release a new album tomorrow, I would listen to it.
Right?
Yeah,
they need a singer.
No, yeah, exactly. I like the music. Whenever they release an album, I'll listen to it. I'm not like a huge fan.
Absurd. Would you give this a 10, Darin?
I would absolutely give Dummy a 10 for sure, and I think it's the best Portishead record, but that's just my opinion.
It's respectable. It's a respectable position, and I don't even want to ask your score, Dan. But what
oh God,
what would you give it?
Like a 8. It's not bad. It's dated. It's very dated.
Pretty sure that your whole review would not have resulted in an 8. I mean,
no, you guys are like this. You guys are misunderstanding me. I just don't think that they're as great as everyone thinks. And they're not some band that's released 3 10 out of 10 records, and I could do without the singer, and it's pretty dated.
Gabe, when you edit this, make sure you insert some of the quotes that Dan literally said during the review as he's trying to backpedal here.
I'm not trying to backpedal at all.
Good. No, I'm glad he's backpedaling.
I'm not backpedaling. I'm not backpedaling at all. Would you think I was going to give it like a really low score?
Yeah.
Well, you're being
less than an 8.
Really disrespectful. Like. You're being very disrespectful.
Maybe I was, trying to piss you off a little bit, but no, it's not. And I've said this like 9 times. I don't dislike them. I just think it would be better if they didn't have a singer. And I think it sounds like the 90s. I can't hear
you repeat this over
and it sounds like the 90s.
I can't deal. All right, we better wrap this one up. We better wrap this. This has been a disaster. We'll try to do better next week.
All right. Well, next week, director Jonathan Demme passed away today. So we're probably going to do a tribute to Talking Heads film that he made, Stop Making Sense, probably best concert film of all time. So we'll probably watch that, talk about it. Plus, whatever the Sunday Classic ends up being, maybe we'll get some BNMs before then. You never can tell. So make sure you subscribe. You can do that on iTunes, pretty much any podcast app, or you can listen on our website in the browser, metaphoricmusic.com. Email us, let us know your thoughts on Stop Making Sense, whatever the classic ends up being, or if you want to bitch at me about Portishead, go ahead. If you want to, even better, if you want to agree with me and shove it in Gabe's face, please send those emails in. You can also do that on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. All that stuff is at Metaphoric Music. So we'll see you next week.
See ya.
So long.